Can you tell the difference in audio quality between the converters of all of these universal audio Apollo interfaces, or do they all just sound the same to you? That's what we're going to find out in today's video. In a previous video, I said this: I couldn't tell the difference. That's my honest opinion on the X8 Gen 1 versus the X16 Generation 2. Today I've got a little bit more time on my hands, so I'm going to compare the Apollo Twin MK2, the Apollo X8 Generation 1, and the second generation Apollo X4 and X16. This comparison will be a blind test. I am doing that on purpose because I think that we get very biased if we see something on screen and then we immediately expect it to sound a certain way. So please have a listen to all of it and write down which one you think is which, and then at the end of the video I'll make sure to reveal the results. Let's get all of that hooked up and let's see what differences we can hear. Okay, so I've got everything loaded up into Pro Tools and ready to send out of these converters and back into them as well. And I can hear you think already, what levels are you doing? How's your gain staging looking? So let's go over that first. With outboard gear, I try to have my files at around -15 or -18 dBFS, something like that. If you look at a VU meter over there on the SSL, for example, the 0 line over here is actually close to -18 dBFS. So over here in Pro Tools, if we look at this meter over here on the drums, you can actually see that it's peaking around -6 dB, but the average level is around -15, -20, and that is actually the level that I want to send out of the converters. And if we were going into outboard gear after coming out of those converter outputs, that -18 dBFS is about the level that that outboard gear works best with. And that way we keep a little bit of headroom in that device so we don't start oversaturating all the transformers and the tubes and all the other bits that are inside of those units. I usually notice the biggest difference in converter quality when I listen for the transient response of the converters. So let's start it off by running some drums through these converters. These drums are from a session I did with Sylvio a couple of months ago in the Atlanta studio. We've recorded a lot of drum samples and loops. If you want to see how that process went, there's a join button down below that brings you to the virtual internship, and there you can see that entire recording process of those samples. And if you want to use the samples for yourself, you'll see that in the description of that video, and you can download all the samples and the loops to use for your own music. As we're just going to test the converters today, I'll make a loop back from the output of the Apollo to the input of the Apollo. I know it's not a real world scenario. Normally there would be a hardware device in between those inputs and outputs, but we're just testing the converters today and I don't want the sonic footprint of another analog device getting in the way of that test. If that doesn't make sense to you, let me know down in the comments so next time we can perfect this comparison thing even more. Okay, let's take these out of here, plug them in the Twin, and over here as well. Line up 3 and 4. Yes. There's something I can't do on the Twin MK2 that I can do on the X4, the X8, and the X16, and that is bypassing the line inputs. So the line gain of this one will not be bypassed, but it will be turned down completely. Then the X4, the X8, and the X16 over there will all have the line gain bypassed. Next up, I want to run some synths. Let's run some synths through it. Synths through converters. Next up, let's check it. For the synths, I want to do an experiment called a null test. Here's how that works and what we can learn from it. What you're going to do is you're going to duplicate your track. So here you see that I've got the same audio file set up on both tracks. And then on one of those two tracks, you want to add a plugin that doesn't have too many bells and whistles and that's very clean, but it needs to have a phase switch. I usually use the stock one-band EQ by Pro Tools, and then on that plugin you're going to hit the phase button. That phase inverts this track, and now if we solo both of those tracks and we play it, we should not get any audio. And we are not. If we bypass that plugin, we are getting audio, so now we know that that works. And what that does is it flips the polarity of the waveform of one of those tracks. So as you can see over here, where the waveform goes up in one track, the waveform goes down in the other. So now we're getting energy pulling away from each other because one wants to go up and one wants to go down. So what is the result? They're not going anywhere, so we don't get any sound. Now we can use exactly that to our advantage because any difference the converters are going to make is a difference in a waveform. So that is not equal energy pulling away from each other, so there will be some residue left. I hope that all makes sense. If it doesn't, please let me know down below and I'll try to make a more in-depth video on this, explaining it in a little bit more detail. But for now, let's have a listen to these two converters with the null test, and then we can hear if there's any residue. If there's no residue and we're hearing nothing, the converters are exactly the same. If we are hearing anything, it means that we're working with different converters. Phase slipping again. A lot of it is cancelling out, but not everything. So we do have different conversion between these two interfaces. The big question is for us, can we actually hear it and does it matter in our day-to-day work? Okay, and then let's borrow some cables over here from the Hazel rig units and connect them together so we can run some stuff through it. And for the last comparison, I want to run some vocals through the converters because with vocals I noticed that it's easier to tell if the frequency response gets altered a lot or there's some nasty distortions along the way. Stuff like that really stand out. So let's have a listen.
So every night my heart aches, it hurts, it breaks. Laying in this bed I made, lost with no direction. So every night my heart aches, it hurts, it breaks. Laying in this bed I made, lost with no direction. So every night my heart aches, it hurts, it breaks. Laying in this bed I made, lost with no direction. So every night my heart aches, it hurts, it breaks. Laying in this bed I made, lost with no direction. So every night my heart aches, it hurts, it breaks. Laying in this bed I made, lost with no direction.
I am very curious, do you feel this has a big enough impact on the sound? Do you actually hear a difference between these converters? Or could they all work for you? Let me know down below in the comments. I would love to hear your thoughts. That's it for me in this video. Thanks so much for watching. If you like this video, please leave a like down below. And if you are not subscribed yet, I know 75% of you are not subscribed. Please subscribe down below. It helps the channel a lot and it allows me to make videos like this one. I'll see you on the next video. Later!